So nice to see you. So nice to see everyone here. This is going to be a very exciting panel. Your playbook for running a world-class demo operation. So thank you to everyone who was here, who's part of this. Dan Katz will be running this session for the next 30 minutes. I'll pop in the last few just to see if there's any questions, but it's a pleasure to introduce Marjorie, Pam, Zach, and of course, Dan from our side. Dan, over to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Nick. All right. So in this session, we're going to walk through a playbook for running a world-class demo operation. So things like how to create assets, deliver them at scale. What are the right ingredients for a world-class demo operation? But first, I want to start with some introductions. I have an amazing panel with me here. First, I'd like to introduce Marjorie Abdelkrime, who has over 20 years of experience in SaaS. She currently leads the migration success team at AWS. And you've probably seen her all over Medium, LinkedIn, and YouTube. She co-leads women empowerment initiatives, has chapters that are all about building inclusive and supportive environments for people to reach their career goals. So welcome, Marjorie. I'm also joined by Zach Lawryk, who is currently the head of solutions consulting at Rippling, but he comes with a long history of building teams and strategy at Slack, Salesforce, Box, Optimizely. And just a quick anecdote from me, in my first week at Demostack, I had the pressures on intimidation of facilitating a panel with Zach, and he made me feel very, very comfortable and welcome. So I'm happy to be here again. And finally, I'm joined by Pam Dunn, who is currently the team lead for solution engineering at Contentful, working with some of my favorite people that used to be my directs. And she really is about helping people see why choosing a role in pre-sales is absolutely the best decision you'll ever make. And I think she mentioned to me too, when we're talking about the traits that make people successful in pre-sales, for her, it's curiosity, number one, and I couldn't agree more. So welcome, everyone. We talked a lot about the last session during demo ops and how that's cross-functional transformation. We discussed challenges around demo ops and some fitting solutions. So in this session, let's get really tactical. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts of what it takes to run a world-class demo operation. So I'm going to start this question off for you, Marjorie. What are some of those key ingredients that we need to run a world-class demo operation?
Yeah, wow, Dan, I sit here and I think about demo operations and just how long, I've personally been in the technical world having to deal with demos and how far we've come along to making this a function that is one that's recognized that needs to be dedicated. I remember back in the days, and I'm going to age myself here for some folks, we would travel with Pelican briefs, right? We'd ship this massive device and have it to the customer site so that we had all of the, the tools and the resources that we needed so that we could effectively demo. And that was done a lot of times by the SEs, right? So the SE was the one that was putting that together and owned updating and making sure that it was functional before they shipped it off to the next person that needed the specific infrastructure device that we were going to be using for the demo. But today, I think it's shifted from needing to understand the why. So knowing from the marketing perspective, the story, who are we talking to, the personas that are behind it, to getting the folks and the team's enablement so that they can fully understand how to use the demo, how to properly walk through and make sure that they're handling all of the objections. And then finally, making sure that you have all of the right tools and assets, whether it be marketing material, presentation, click-through components, and knowing kind of where to walk through. So again, a lot of folks think of that as part of the enablement, but I think that that's something that's separate as you think about all the ingredients that you need to bring together to make a world-class demo operation successful. And, we talked about this, many times with you and others, but understanding the why you're in front of your customer, I think is a big one. And making sure that you're positioning the story of what you bring and what the value that you bring from your company.
Great answer, Marjorie. I am curious with the Pelican briefs. Was it the AE or the SE who actually carried the brief?
Oh, it was always the SE. Yeah, not the.
It's always that way. It's always that way. All right. So yeah, we're hearing, those as ingredients of enablement, storytelling, tools, and assets. Let's go to Zach. I'm curious your perspective here. What are the key ingredients from your perspective to running that world-class demo org?
Sure. I think, sales has changed a lot over the last number of years, especially in the last, I think, 2 or so or 3 or so years. But I think what remains constant is that the demo still is like the crescendo of the sales process, right? It's that focal point. That's what everybody, especially buyers, are looking forward to, is like, when am I going to see your product? When is the demo? How are you building up to that demo? And it's a nice forcing function for any organization internally to orient around and rally around the concept of the demo. What do you want to show? What are the key value props? How does that change or evolve as you scale through the process from the top of the funnel to the point of actually enabling a decision? So I think it's really nice and interesting, and we do this at Rippling as well, where it's a very demo-centric culture, and so we've used that demo as a forcing function to get all these cross-functional teams together to align on what is the story that we want to tell our customers, and when do we want to tell that story, depending on where they are in their evaluation journey. So I know it's pretty broad, but it can be a really nice way to get people aligned, get people together in the same room, virtual or otherwise, and align on what's most important, the story that you're going to tell the customers and the value you provide to customers.
I love that. And I've heard pre-sales described often as that nexus in the center of an organization, but I've never heard someone talk about a demo-centric culture and using that as a forcing function to orient other parts of the organization around. I love that, Zach. Let's go to you, Pam. So what are those ingredients for you to make a world-class demo operation? Is there something else besides just enablement and demo assets?
Yeah, we think about demos. Like everyone here, we know that sales is evolving. Marjorie gave me a little bit of angst when I heard her talking about carrying all this stuff around, and having done this for 20-something years myself. There's so much that we used to do in the past that we don't do now, but there's actually so much more that we have to learn in the pre-sales function, right? And I know Zach talks about this kind of culminates to a demo, but there's so many external things that we really have to take a look at when we talk about demo operations is, how do we get everyone on the same page to get to the part where we demo our product, right? How do we make sure our SCs and our AEs are both aligned? Here at Contentful, we have some pretty, I guess we call them more robust capabilities, where we're actually certifying SCs on how to do our own demo framework. And we've evolved that from some of the ones that everyone knows. I saw Peter Cohen was in the last session. Shout out to Peter. We've taken a piece of that. We've kind of used it as part of what we call a Contentful demo. And we're just trying to orient our teams with this framework so that we can actually help them have kind of more conversational, right? So we can focus on the business challenges. What are the real pains? We don't want to just show up and just show you a demo, right? Although we feel like the demo is what everyone wants to see, they want to see product, but what we really want to do is eliminate the, just show me the product, right? It's really hard to just show anybody a product. And, we've gone through evolutions of how to show them a menu-based demo or a vision demo, but we're trying to really level our SCs and our AEs so that we know it also is not just about the demo, it's about the stories we tell. It's the way we ask questions. It's how we layer our questions from one to the next so that we can really find out, what are the real catalysts? What are the challenges, the business impacts? We're trying to really look at this holistically as we build out demo operations in different parts that really make sense for our business.
Awesome. That's really interesting that you highlighted this certification. I wanted to go back to Zach for a second. I know you and I have talked before, Zach, about a lot of certification motions that we've had in our careers as SEs a long time ago. Are you doing that in your organization today? Do you see that same focus that Pam was talking about?
We will get there, and I think we're at a different stage of growth. I would say the first step for us, I think, before you can certify is you sort of have to catalog the category of demos that you delivered as a team. And that can actually be a really healthy process to run through as a cross-functional team as well.
Right.
What are all the stories, kind of the 101, 201 level stories that we tell our customers? You certify on those fundamentals with the idea that, of course, you're going to tailor those fundamentals to the customer or to the stage of the sales process that you're in. But I still believe that certification is the way to go to get people to sort of internalize those various stories. And it also can give you a perspective on the scale of specialization to some extent. Yeah. Like if you need to certify somebody in 15 different stories, you're probably at a point in your staffing where you need to consider having specialized functions or somebody who's focused on a particular category of demo or story or product.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that sounds like a pretty scary job description to me, right? Yeah. So let's dig a little deeper on storytelling, because I'm hearing that this is a really critical ingredient in successful demo operations. So what does good storytelling mean in the context of a demo? And maybe I want to start with you, Marjorie, here. How do you know it's a good story? Is it the story the same for AEs, or is it different for SEs? And how do you teach people to tell stories?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that we need to address here. One, when we think about stories, it's understanding the personas that you're addressing, right? And knowing who the customer and the buyer is. And a lot of times you'll have multiple buyers and you'll need to have multiple stories to address the specific concerns that buyer is going to have, because for them, they're buying for different reasons than someone else in the organization might, right? So I think that's number one as we think about good storytelling development. The second is around use cases. And this goes to industry, verticals, where the customer sits, and what are some of, again, the consistent conversations and stories that you can back up with proof of what you've done already in the past and how you can validate your solution to them, and demonstrating to them that it can help solve their problem. So stories around that. So working back from the customer. And I think the final piece, around storytelling that you need to make sure you're incorporating to make a good story is objection handling. And obviously, we're not going to always know every single objection that a customer might have, but a lot of times they tend to be fairly consistent. So having that addressed as part of the recipe that you're putting together for the stories for your teams is extremely important, so that folks know how to address these challenges that might come up. Now, to your question around AE versus SE, I used to work with this team back when I was at Symantec, and we had acquired a solution. And one of the things that we did was it was legal e-discovery, right? So we would talk to lawyers. That was our main buyer. And because it was a non-technical buyer, the AE SE demo and the storytelling that we used to do was exactly the same. So the AE needed to know the exact same positioning that the SE would position. We obviously had additional, more technical, if we were going to be talking to infrastructure folks that needed to understand, how does this integrate into this component, or, other add-ins that we might need to be considering. So I think for the first demo, it should be consistent. There really shouldn't be a difference, and either or can play into that. Now, how do you validate? I think one of the areas around there that, I've seen very useful, one is the peer-to-peer. So having kind of this group, review of how you're positioning your story and having your team challenge you. I got to tell you, you asked about butterflies earlier. My butterflies come the most when I'm talking to my peers, right? Because those are the ones that understand the space the most, that will call me out, without any reservation. And I think that's really the hardest crew that you're going to have to face, and probably the one that will give you the best feedback as far as your storytelling and whether or not it's going well. And then there's other tools like recording and scoring of those specific stories and making sure you've got the right rubric.
Yeah, amazing stuff here. That kind of feedback, we say feedback is a gift. That really is a gift, and that's a part of a culture of a strong pre-sales team as well, is that feedback and coaching culture. It's great answers. So Pam, I want to go to you. So can you tell me a little bit about how you incorporate storytelling, and maybe like what I know about Contentful is, it's a solution that can allow you to build an almost infinite number of different things, different industries, different types of software. So how do you manage telling that story, right, in a way that's going to be specific to a prospect, and how do you get people to learn that motion?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And we have an amazing demo engineering team here at Contentful. They build out what we call our use case demos. So as a pre-sales person, you can literally get a copy of one of these three main types of demos, and you can use that in your own environment. You can create, essentially, because we're content, you can create these great front ends too. It's amazing. What they also did is, with our product, they built out a story repository, if you will. So one central place for all the stories. When I first started, I was thinking there were stories everywhere. Now we have a one central place where you can go as an SC and actually do a search by the use case. So it's amazing.
Wow. Wow.
So
Is
shout
there
out
like
to
a,
them.
oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. It's amazing because it's essentially going to like a web portal. You can put in the stuff you're searching for. Let's say you're talking to a retailer who's, working with an e-commerce partner. You can actually search for those e-commerce partners and pull up the story and then take the excerpts of that and make it your own. So
Amazing.
It's not just for SEs though. The best part about this is for anyone in the organization who needs access to the stories. So we're encouraging our AEs and SEs to find places within, during discovery too. It could be during discovery. It doesn't have to just be during a demo where, as Marjorie was saying, you actually handle an objection with a story, right? Because sometimes it's not, they're not believing us because we're the vendor. Although I think the SC is probably more believable than the AE sometimes. But it's really about our customers who've done this. And there's really great nuggets of information. What we're trying to do, in my suggestion, was we kind of pull out the value statements, right? Because sometimes you have to read through the whole story to figure out, okay, what was the value statement I'm trying to present back? So it's not just like, hey, they implemented us in 3 months or something like that. We really want hard, they saved money, increased, or they had an increase in, or there was a risk that they were, no longer having. So something like that. I feel like there's so much good information in there that we've been able to essentially put into the hands of the people that really need it, so that, as we're doing our prep, as we're doing our demo, what we call the demo loop, you have the ability to say, hey, at this point, you're looking for ease of use for content editors. Well, here's a story about, one of our customers that's doing the exact same thing. So it's been really great for us to be able to have that as a resource.
That's incredible. Yeah, that is incredible.
Can I just plus one that? I mean, I think like that's such we're aspiring to do what Pam has already done. And that process of having people go through and actually create the content for the top of the funnel or for scale assets, very healthy, valuable for the SE team as well to align on what the stories are. I love that, Pam. I'm gonna contact you offline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
I've actually gotten a shout out from some other folks too on LinkedIn to ask how we were doing this. So yeah, happy to talk to anybody about that too.
That's amazing. So that sounds like a great tool, a great framework that really, really makes demo operations extend beyond just pre-sales, right? You're giving value to a whole other parts of the organization. Zach, we've talked a little bit about another tool that you're using called the Value Proposition Canvas to help people learn good storytelling skills. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I just spent a number of hours last night putting it into a demo framework readiness doc that's sort of based on the Value Proposition Canvas. And in a nutshell, it's, I think, a really powerful way to align your products and services to your customer profile, or what we call ideal customer profile. It makes that connection really apparent. So you start by saying, who is our target customer? What do they care about? What are the jobs they're trying to get done? Pains and gains. And then you describe your product and services, both in terms of gain creators and pain relievers. Very simple exercise. And then you make the connection to say, like, here is how our product or services actually address what our customers care about. And it's a really powerful exercise to accelerate a value methodology or a way of thinking about value for your customers that's really unique, that, frankly, is really hard to do via other means. So I found it super valuable. There's also a really great video that we can share from, I think they're called Strategizer, where they explain the Value Proposition Canvas. It's a great video. And that's where we kind of started this initiative at Rippling. We did it at Slack as well to sort of describe our solutions. And it's particularly helpful for any product or service where you consider it as a platform where there are, a wide variety of solutions that you can provide to customers. It helps you sort of categorize those solutions in a really digestible way. I'm a big fan of it.
Amazing. Yeah.
Wow. So we're touching on a lot of really important areas inside of this playbook, let's call it, right? So there's the storytelling, there's the enablement, there's the assets, like the story repository that Pam was telling us about. Something I'm curious about that maybe extends the assets part of the playbook a bit more is data, like demo data, right? We typically use demo data to tell stories that resonate with our prospects. And I'm wondering if one of you guys wanted to share a little bit about how you imagine curating, managing demo data inside of that kind of ops playbook?
I can go.
Sure.
So this also goes to, and the reason why I use this example is because we required a lot of data, and this was the e-discovery platform at Symantec, and we actually used former active cases. So we would get data that was publicly available and dump them into the tool so that we could simulate an actual case.
Wow.
And it required, it really required a lot of imagining of what went on during the discovery process and trying from a customer perspective, not demo discovery, and trying to find out, how the case progressed and really looking at what actually happened. So I find that using somewhat of real events, even if it's, other solutions on how customers have used the technology, really makes such a powerful story, especially in these circumstances where you've got publicly available information where the customer can go validate, like, hey, how did they actually use this? And look at how the case progressed in the media and from a news perspective. So that was pretty cool from a data perspective and super important for us to have, because having gibberish in the system was just because, we had that at one point and that didn't work because we were unable to search for that content. We were unable to create kind of correlations like we were trying to do with the information. So real life examples I find to be super powerful.
And the fact that you had publicly available like data from former cases made it really accessible. But Zach, I'm curious, like at Rippling, your HR type platform, like how do you tell stories with data when you're dealing with things like, personal information?
It's hard. Frankly, we obviously can't use real customer information, and we are seeding data in sort of fictitious examples or contrived scenarios. So we have a pretty, without going into too much detail, a pretty engineering heavy demo creation and management process, which is not ideal at the moment. But it's tough when you're releasing new products on a quarterly basis and
for sure
keep up with all of that. So it's pretty intertwined with our product release process right now.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. How about you, Pam? Again, because it's sort of the sky is the limit with Contentful. I feel like, how do you guys manage data? And maybe we could talk a little more about like the environment part of the demo assets in the playbook too. How do you manage that, the sprawl that can happen?
Yeah, we're looking at different ways to even do this better. When I started at Contentful, this process has changed so dramatically. I mean, an SC today, or even anyone who wants to in Contentful using Slack, can spin up an environment just in using a command in Slack. So they can actually choose from the demo use cases that we have, and they can spin up a very full functioning demonstration that includes front-end website, mobile device, and all the things that have to go with that to essentially make this work in real life. So we've got to simulate a lot of things. The challenge is how do we continue to scale that, right? We're actually looking today, without giving away any of our secrets to the rest of Contentful, but we're looking at ways that we can provide demos for AEs. I know we had talked about that before as a group, but how do we get? I watched the previous session. They were talking about everyone should be able to do a demo, and I'm very much from that side as well. I think everyone should be able to touch our product. But how do we do that? Because we are a fairly technical product, and we also want to be able to get metrics on that, right? So, obviously, if we're using a tool like Demostack, that would be super easy to do. But how do we kind of use what we have today to be able to, maybe scale it back a little bit, or be able to teach the field to be able to do some of their own demos, but then also get the measurement from that. How effective were they? How much did it help the process? Because, we're really looking at our buyer's journey very differently, because we know buyers are changing, and a lot of times they just want to get their hands on your product, right? We offer a free trial like a lot of the products out there. So, how do we better enable everyone at the company to be able to do a better job at, being able to position us in a certain way without it turning into one of these, feature function things? We really don't want it to be that. We want to be able to measure it. So yeah, stay tuned. We're at the forefront of that. We're just taking a look at it now.
I can imagine that a lot of people in the audience right now are asking those same questions inside of their organizations. Is how do you manage it? How do you democratize your demos to get them in the hands of other people? And you touched on a point around analytics. So maybe we've got a couple more minutes here. I want to wrap up a little bit on this part of the playbook. Is how do we know if we're doing it right?
how do we measure the success of our demo ops organization and iterate forward to continually improve? And I'll just open that question up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at the overall metrics on, we're starting with, how effective are the demos? Are we, essentially moving the needle, right? Are we winning those opportunities? We're trying to use Salesforce for some of that tracking. We're asking SCs to provide a lot more information, whether or not we needed a certain strategist at a certain level. We're really trying to dive deep into those metrics to see how effective that is as an organization. But we're just scratching the surface there too. We're trying to take in a lot of data points to help make sense of it, right? Because it's not always direct correlation. I think Marjorie was talking about that, about some other stuff too, but it's not always a direct correlation. So we're trying to do a better job at really diving deep into those metrics and seeing what that tells us.
It can be also really powerful. Like in advance, I think some people get intimidated by the concept of demo engineering if you don't already have that function to say like, oh, I've got to throw bodies at this problem and I don't have the headcount, et cetera. I think what can be successful in advance of that is instead using demo engineering as a term to refer to your broader demo strategy. Say, here's what we need to do to automate the process, and here's how we're going to measure it. And even if you don't have the mechanisms to measure what is important, it identifies those gaps in a really clear way so that you can determine where you need to make investments, either in analytics or technology or people, and you kind of scale that out over time. But I think it's good to like early on make that front and center as part of your SE strategy to say like, we need a demo ops or demo engineering strategy. And at some point we may have a team to focus on this. But this is where we are today.
Great answer.
I hate to interrupt this conversation, Dan. I assure you, I've been watching backstage and I'm just fascinated by the compelling conversation. But just a couple quick housekeeping tips. Obviously, This is an exceptional panel. Please feel free to follow them on LinkedIn. You should, because you're going to get all these kind of great resources, information out of them. Also, if this kind of content's really valuable, follow the Demostack LinkedIn page, because this is the type of content we're putting out there regularly. So definitely want to do that. Last chance. Any last quick questions from the audience before we wrap up this session?
There's a great question from Kevin, and maybe Marjorie, you can take this. Is a demo to close lost quickly as valuable as moving the needle?
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, I would agree. It is. Yeah, because I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think I don't know if I shared this term, but I had an SE who would say POC stands for purchase order canceled. So I think one of the things that we would try to do is avoid doing a POC. So if a demo can get you to quickly get to an opportunity, either a decision, close, lost,
preach.
That's what you want.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap this up. I'm so sorry, Dan, to interrupt. I know you could go all day on this, but we are going to be coming up with our next session, which is demystifying the demo landscape with Gilad and Carrie Sokolsky. So we're very excited about that. Thank you so much for coming to this session today, and keep following us. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.